Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Fan Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Madness Entertainment Group presents the Madness Comic Network with original programming and additional comic-related content.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Good evening, Internet. Welcome to That Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, joined as always by Kasisi Harris.
Hey, what's up?
And also David Rios.
How you doing?
And tonight we'll be talking about the importance of networking and building a support community as an independent comic book creator. And David will also probably be able to lend some perspective on this, having spent more time in the field than we have, but also having worked with Marvel as well. So also seeing what networking and traditional publishing might look like. So before we get into that, we have I don't really have any. I would have housekeeping this week, but I'm not going to a city, so I don't actually have any housekeeping. Is anyone going to any upcoming conventions or anything they need to promote?
Not I know.
All right. Well, if you're in the Portland area and you're going to a city, have fun for me. I will not be tabling those here. Okay. So we're going to be talking about networking. For those of you who are brand new into creative or professional spaces, essentially that's just business jargon for building out your list of people that you can call on for job help. Usually it's the best networks are actually made more informally. It's friends and colleagues that you have across the different businesses and fields you've worked in. But it usually ends up being that if you need help with a project, the first person you call is a friend, or if someone is looking to hire someone, they're probably looking at friends first. So building a network can be very important. So I'll open up the floor here. Just in general, because we've all worked day jobs as well as independent comic book being independent comic book creators. So can you share some of your personal experiences networking, both in terms of your day career, but as well as making comics?
I mean, I'll go as a novice, right? As just entering into this. It was kind of difficult for me to understand how to do this because this industry was so big, like in the 90s. And
Right.
so, coming into it now, I just kind of threw myself in as many spaces with comic book creators as I could. And then I didn't want to, I didn't want to have the reputation of being like a moocher and constantly like
Sure.
mooching things off of people in those groups. So I just took the approach that no matter how rough, my creations would be, I would create and then put something out there to show that I am doing something. And then maybe I'll ask advice on what I'm doing. And, I guess that's the approach I'm taking with networking is kind of show that you're doing something in a space, not necessarily always taking from that space.
Yeah.
But yeah. But again, that's entry level. That's somebody entering in. So
My thing with networking has always been I always try to keep in communication with people that I've worked with. Try to keep it open. I'm always looking on different media sites, Facebook, stuff like that, to connect with the people. And when I go and I do show up at conventions, I'm usually a guest at the convention more so than a presenter. I usually try to go through and see the people that I've been talking with. I always try to circle around, talk with them. Just keep reminders. There's a lot of people that I've worked with that know me by face, that know me by some of the stuff that I've done. Then there's other people that are relatively new, so I'm always trying to go through and remind them maybe something that happened last time that we talked about, things like that. The other thing that I'm always trying to do is I always try to lend my support on projects or things like that. So if I know that somebody that I've been a friend of mine that I've been dealing with, I may go and I may purchase some artwork or things to support their endeavor. They're there at the table. It's costing them money to be there, so I try to support where I can. Maybe it's buying artwork, maybe it's buying one of the books, getting it signed. Yeah. Plus, I'll go through and talk about to other people what a good experience I've had with somebody and all that. So I always try to keep that networking thing going and promote people for what they are, and hope that I'm also promoting myself as well. The long-term things, like at shows, if there's any panels, like I typically try to get in and attend the Ultraverse panels and things like that. that I did with the creators and be responsive and stuff like that. So those are some of the things that I try to do with networking for just the community at large, for the group that I have and the people that I've talked to, just to kind of renew those bonds and let people know I'm out there. So
my networking experience has been pretty much that all my success comes from networking, both in my day job as well as in my creative aspects. And my extent of networking is usually just coming down to saying yes whenever someone throws something my way, and then trying to be kind and courteous to everyone that I meet on that project. And then whenever they need something, say yes to that. And eventually you end up finding yourself in positions that you can kind of manifest or build for yourself by doing that. If you say yes to the things that you want to do. I went out of college to working in finance to getting back to my degree in working in copywriting by saying yes to a bunch of freelance positions or thrown that way until one of them decided to give me a full-time posting, and now I've become the head of a marketing department. With comics, I just actually worked in short fiction, writing and publishing short fiction, finding whatever journal will take me, ideally ones that pay, and submitting or meeting their requests, until eventually you end up getting emails or someone reaching out saying like, "Hey, I got this project in mind. I want you to do this." Or what happened is Roland said, "I need a editor to review submissions. You want to do this?" And I said yes, and then eventually it turned into me taking over the Silverline website for a little bit, and then him asking me to start submitting scripts. But I'll save the rest of my thoughts for the next question here. But my experience with networking is that it's usually a good thing, and the way I found success with it is by being a yes man to an extent. I'll get into what that extent means here in this second question. Well, I'll ask the rest of you first. What were some initial challenges you faced when trying to build your network? Or I guess in KCC's case, what challenges are you finding yourself running into now?
As a independent comic book creator, right? You come into it with this idea of the old way of producing a comic, right? There are these basically production factories for comics, and so you try and recreate that with your network. But the problem is, you run into situations where you don't have reliable either folks in the network that you try and communicate with, and so navigating through those to find the quality branches in the network is the hardest part, or at least for me so far has been the hardest part. And you got to kind of strike out and experiment a lot. At least that's what I've experienced in communicating with folks. You got to kind of take chances to figure out where those good strong branches are in your network, and then you can build something off that. So initially, finding, especially when you're starting out, finding reliable artists who want to stick with you throughout the course of a project is hard. And then how do you tailor that? Like, how do you tailor your approach to that? Do you create smaller comic books, and that's how you start to engage your network? Oh, I know that this kind of group of people or this group of artists they're on board for a short project, so that's all I'll produce right now. But I guess that's the biggest challenge for me right now, is of what you can access or of the people that you can access. How do you kind of move forward with projects? So that's been the biggest challenge so far. But the more that I engage with folks and the more that you have repetition with certain folks, the more you can have bigger projects and feel comfortable in that network or with those group of people to perform those tasks in a timely manner and get projects done. So.
Yeah.
I basically try to be respectful of people. I think that for me goes a long way. I never try to, um, when I look at things, I never try to criticize things because everybody has their own styles and all that stuff. And, it may be something that doesn't fit my style, but it doesn't mean that, it's anything bad. So I always try to encourage, the people in my network, and with anything, kind of stumbling over my words here.
That's all right.
But yeah, I try to, like I said, I try to be respectful on that and try to keep positive things going. And sometimes things don't work out, and like KCC said, sometimes we do get some negative things that come, but
Yeah.
we just try to steer through and find and work with the positives, and hope everything works out, and it's been pretty good so far. So
Good. Yeah, I kind of the same thing. I did. I had a recent challenge in that I've had a in that same vein. One of the recent challenges has been shortly after Wolf Hunter 1, the artist just dipped out without any communication.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if they took their payment. I mean, that's their problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was you never really know with people because you're not you're not inside their head, so you don't know what their goals or wants are with each thing, and you don't know what's driving them, so you don't know if they're just going to dip without any communication or if they're going to do something weird and intentionally or unintentionally sabotage a project. But the other issue I'm having right now is more of a personal issue, but it comes with building network, is that and it's something I tried to avoid. I was pretty good about for a while, and then I stumbled back into it, which is if you develop a good network that throws stuff your way, chances are you're going to get a lot of things to say yes to. And if you say yes to too many things, you're going to start missing deadlines.
Mm-hmm.
And it might become an issue where you need to learn that not all opportunities are worth pursuing as much as other ones per se. It's kind of why I threw the qualifier on there when I was talking about journals that I work with. Now I won't submit to publishing that won't pay me. At this point, I feel like my writing chops are up to snuff. I've got enough exposure to have people in and out of my Twitch or following me on Threads. Follow me on Threads, everyone. That I don't necessarily need to do free stuff.
Yeah.
If it interests me enough, I will. But like bare minimum, I'm like getting my word count, my word rate in there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, right now I have too many projects. The good thing is they're all paying projects, but I have too many things going on and I've missed some deadlines. Roland, I'm sorry. Okay. The next bullet point I have here is I can kind of combine these, but building out that network. It used to be, especially back in like the 80s and 90s, and even like the early aughts, that you can only build a network really in person or through physical media. But usually you were meeting people in the office, at the bullpen, at conventions, or at things related to that. But now you can build a network by following someone on Instagram and they follow you back, or you respond to someone in the comments, something like that. This can be kind of interesting, like in Kasisi's perspective versus David's. But where do you guys have found that the majority of your network has come from? Do you find that there is a balance between physical and online, or does one tip the scale over the other?
Hmm.
I have to say for sorry.
Go ahead, David.
I have to say for mine, most of it's been physical. When I started, um, I was I got some good exposure. I was working in a comic store, so I had some publishers coming in, but everything most of the things were all face to face. We had some independent stuff that we submitted um, with a friend of mine that was doing penciling and stuff like that. And then for the coloring stuff, that was kind of a completely different, a different. It's still related to the comic store, but it was um, with the inking stuff I used to do. It was kind of a joint thing between the penciler and myself, where we were talking and working on things and getting some. We were doing some stuff locally for the comic store I was working for, things like that. But whenever it came to the coloring stuff, I was kind of more on my own. So it was talking to some people that had come in and getting a lot of my stuff, samples, things. I was very, very, very rough at the time. Just constantly uh, reminding, checking and doing all this stuff. But again, this was more physical. It was calling and checking if there's openings and stuff like that. It was a very hard a very hard push back then from the physical side. So most of my stuff comes from there more so than the online, which is kind of interesting because I do want to hear Cassisi's view on this in a whole new situation where where online is almost very prominent. So
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. My experience has been primarily the opposite, right? Where, because it's so accessible online to throw yourself into spaces with creators. But what I try and do is if I go to a con, I try to always be engaging in any space that has creators in it, like panels, ask questions, try and be an active member of that space, if that makes any sense. And that doesn't always mean that that's going to yield a connection, but in some cases it does. And that, I've had that happen too. So, um, but yeah, I'm primarily throwing myself in online spaces with creators, um, and even when I do projects, it's typically with people from around the world and not even local to the United States. So, um, yeah, probably more so online with me.
Okay, yeah. I kind of fall into a little bit of 50-50 with that. I should be more active online, but usually I just end up engaging in the meme post or the back and forth crap posting with the other creators that I know or have known. Um, Usually it has come through extensions of physical connections I've made, which have either been at conventions or through connections I made in college or in previous jobs. Um, and also some things that don't necessarily have the straight connection, right? Like the
Mhm.
friend of an ex knows someone who draws comics, and so while studying the ex, I got their information and stuff like that. Um, However, I found that I start connections physically and then I maintain them digitally. Like it's a lot easier to maintain the connection with someone by becoming mutuals on social media and then instant messaging, just with how fast you can communicate now.
Yeah.
So I find that I kind of fall somewhere like a hybrid process of that. But that being said, there are a lot of there's I need to be more active on this subreddit as well. There's a couple subreddits. One of them is called r/comic book collabs, something like that. And essentially, it's a bunch of newer artists or newer writers with tags saying what they do and if they're looking for pay or if they're looking to do revenue share, if they're just wanting to get work done. Posting either their portfolio so far or their pitches back and forth. So it kind of operates like a market board for everyone in that early starting space.
Mhm.
So if you're a writer who needs to find an artist and you can't afford to pay them up front, but you'd be more than willing to give them 75-80% of a Kickstarter, you could probably meet someone on there. Be like, hey, there's the agreement. If we fund, you take the lion's share of the money because you do the lion's share of the work, stuff like that. Or if you manage to set aside enough money to cover someone's page rate, you can do a set commission from there. But poke around online to find communities like that. I find that they've been really helpful.
Nice.
I have a cat that is I don't know what they're doing. They just
All you had to say is, "I have a cat." Everything
no.
is explained. Yeah.
I just watched them leap from the bathroom across the hallway onto the tree.
Yeah.
Cat tree we have set up. I'm like, that is a massive horizontal. All right. Yeah. So I kind of gave a strategy of mine there, which is starting physical, maintain digitally, and then also looking at subreddits. I think there's also like, what's that? Is it digital threading, something like that? Digital webbing. The website where a lot of illustrators. This is typically where you have to start paying page rates. They post a lot of stuff on there as well. But either physical or digital, since you guys have more experience in one or the other, opposite each other. What sort of tips or strategies do you guys find to be most effective that you want to share with new creators?
Again, I'm entry level, so I believe that you have to kind of have a wide breadth of exposure before you can narrow down into the quality few. So I'm still in that wide berth, right, where I throw myself out in as many spaces as I can, and then if I'm kind of looking for projects, at least my own project, I'm going to Fiverr, I'm going to I'm going to a whole bunch of different places, and then spending the hours trying to vet in those pools of places. How many artists do you contact just to see if one of them bites? That whole deal. So I'm in that wide berth of a digital kind of presence thing, trying to narrow down that quality network. But
Definitely.
For me, it's my recommendation for building the network is bring lots of samples of your stuff. Find the fellow creators that interest you, and don't be afraid to approach them. This is from the physical side, but it also can be from the internet side and all this stuff. Always go through it and relate to the people that you're working with or that you're trying to communicate with. I find that people like to hear, all right, what is it that I understand that you like the stuff that I do. What is it that you like? What do you take from this? So if you have good examples of things that you like, that's a good way to kind of build those bonds with people. Obviously, if you have somebody that you bring up things that they're not strong with, then people may question what's going on. But if you've got people, say it's somebody that from an artist point of view, somebody that's fantastic with backgrounds and stuff like that. And if you're the type of person that really gets detailed in your backgrounds and really likes to put a lot of effort, and you find those people, you can make that relation with them on the work that they do. I not only love the amount of details you put in. I love the perspective you put into it, or maybe it's the style. I like that you put a lot of heavy goth type artwork into it. Maybe you used old buildings, that type of thing. So just always go through and find the people you like, and point out what you like about them, what you are trying to learn from them, and all that. And I think that'll help build your bonds, because people tend to bond more with people that they can relate to, rather than somebody that just sits there. I love your work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I also add on to that. Also, don't be afraid to approach someone with the goal of just making a friend at the moment, not necessarily looking for work, but just trying to make a friend in the moment. I'm friends with the gentleman who did the Transformers covers for IDW. Because they're both at a convention in Florida, and he walked over to his table where he started talking, and then we learned that we're both people of a certain political swing that's not common in Florida, and we've also shared a bunch of other things. We're both into Gundam. We both like stuff, and then just turned into us hanging out all day on the last day of the convention, and then we're like, oh, someone at your table, we'll go over there. Someone at your table, okay, we'll go over there. And trying to do a really good friendship out of that connection. But don't be afraid to, if you're at the after convention bar in the hotel, or and you see someone who's table you walked by earlier and you kind of like their stuff, but you didn't approach them, and they're feel free to say hi to people and try to build human connections as well. And then hopefully that'll also open up more of those avenues for you then to give those portfolio pitches as well, if they're not necessarily in the right place to do a portfolio pitch to begin with. Or if you do a portfolio pitch and you end up connecting with someone, feel free to establish that into something further, because usually those deep friendships will also allow for more communication and more opportunities down the line. But and also, if you have each other's back, that will do wonders for just having support and supporting others.
And that's you're pointing out a good thing is, somebody that you just walked up to and met them for the first time, they don't really know you. It takes time. It takes time to build that, that reputation, what type of person you are, and all that. And exactly what Tim was talking about. Those times where, you hang out, or you've seen them a few times, and people get a feel for you. That is a big thing, because it's if your goal is to get connections for work, then how is somebody that's just met you 2 hours ago going to really know your work and how your stuff is? And there's also in addition to the con stuff and all that, I know that Tim, you've talked before about sending maybe sending a copy of your book to somebody and saying, hey, here's this, read it, see if you like it, whatever, let me know. Maybe something sticks, maybe something they go, oh well, this looks like something that we could do. But there's lots of different ways to go through and just get people familiar with your stuff, but make sure that you're not hounding them.
Yeah.
People also don't like to be hounded.
Yeah.
Just be presentable, be courteous, and get your stuff and get your stuff out there. Point them to your stuff that's out there, and if your stuff's out there, they have a chance to see it. And if they recommend, then the people that they recommend to have a chance to see it. So,
Vic with the inside joke sent me a cover earlier. Dull Comics Werewolf looks awfully similar to a cover from issue 2 for Wolf Hunter. But yeah, sending your book to someone. I don't know if anyone in the creative space that wants to reject free comic books. Of course, like your wording on that is gonna be the thing. Guys, it's just like, here's my comic book. Do you want to work with me? That's probably going to be a turnoff. But if you say something like if you're a fan of Critical Role and they have a PO box, and you send them a genuine letter or something attached to it, it's like, hey, I'm a big fan of your guys' show. I've been watching it forever. You guys have inspired me to be creative in my own way. This is something I recently made. Please enjoy, share it with everyone. Have a good day. And then you include your contact info and the best way to reach and all that at the bottom. But doing something like that, where giving your project to people who are in positions to make this decisions regarding more creative work, but in a way that is, if nothing else, you just gave someone a gift and hopefully improve their day. But at best, they see it, they like it, and they're like, actually, we have this in mind. Let's reach out to this person. Yeah. Okay, our next bullet point. Now, we're kind of talking about this, but the eventual goal of networking, outside of building good connections, is collaboration and partnerships. Eventually finding someone or some ones that you want to work with and make something creative and get that out, or someone who is willing to pay you to do something creative and get that out. I already kind of shared some of mine, but I think David also as well. But we'll use this as an opportunity to go into more detail. But sharing examples. Can you share any examples of a successful collaboration or partnership that came from a networking effort? And also, how do you identify those potential collaborators within the industry?
I think writing an issue of Trump's in the. Can you hear me? All right.
Yeah.
Writing the in the Christmas special, that Silverline 2021 Christmas special. So, just being active in the streams, and I guess doing things on my own and constantly keeping lines of communication open just afforded me an opportunity.
You were one of our first regular chatters when the show just started out and had like 2 viewers.
Oh yeah. I remember that. Yeah, just kind of sticking with it and kind of doing my own thing again, not trying to necessarily take from the situation, but being in the right place at the right time and then saying yes to things. Kind of worked out for me in that regard, but I don't have very many. Mostly I'm trying to give opportunity to other people to work on my stuff, so I'm the paying guy who saves and then creates the opportunity. But I think that is probably the first instance where I felt like, oh wow, being out there, having communication and networking with certain people afforded an opportunity for me to kind of showcase something. So
just reading some of the comments, and
we have more viewers than that, Vic. They're lurkers, but also a lot of our viewership or listenership happens after the fact when it gets put out to Spotify and Google Podcasts and all that. If you're on iTunes, give us 5 stars.
With me, it's kind of example I led before with doing the stuff locally in the store with my co-creator, penciler, and that led to going through and having our one of our stories and a creation that ended up getting copyrighted to both of us in Manga Newswatch magazine. And I think that led to some other, I think that led to the backup feature that we did in Zillion #4 for Trinity Comics. So So a lot of that initial started from the stuff that we just did in the store, just to throw stuff out there. Newsletters, had a small story in with the newsletter, a couple pages each newsletter type thing. So a lot of the little stuff that you do, even if it seems pretty inconsequential, if you get some of the exposure right and all that, it can take you as baby steps along your path as you go. So that's probably one of the better examples that I could probably present.
Sure.
For my stuff.
Yeah. For me, it was a matter of first getting into writing professionally and doing it professionally. It was more a matter of kicking in the door, just repeatedly, several times, breaking your shin.
I guess that works. Go in with a baseball bat.
Just trying to get someone to pick a book. I was like, it's the one guy who's trying to breach, but instead of doing the side kick, he does it front on. But yeah, no. And then eventually, from that, I was able to actually get communication coming back my way, saying like, "Hey, I read your thing in this," or "You said you're interested in this." So last time we talked, or "You submitted a while ago and we didn't get that time. Are you willing to resubmit for this?" And eventually that led into getting an email online, just because I was a bit of a brown noser in college, but I'm not gonna say I was studious, because I definitely wait until the last day to get my assignments turned on. But they're good assignments. I graduated as valedictorian, actually.
There you go.
So if you have the right kind of ADHD where you need that hard deadline, work with the strengths you're given.
Oh my god.
Some of us need the pressure of a hard deadline. But I eventually, after being published so many times, promoting that myself, and then Roland wanting to since you put together more writers, that turned into him, where he's like, "Hey, this kid was good in my class. He's still writing and being published now, so that means that he's got chops." And that's the combination that led to me getting Wolf Hunter put out. Wolf Hunter 2, I believe, is illustrated and should be in art and colors now, and I think Wolf Hunter 3 is now in the process of getting illustrated. So the series should be coming to a head in the next year or so.
Nice.
Yeah. As far as identifying people who are good collaborators or potential collaborators, honestly, find people who reject you with thought put into it. Or flat out, if you're excited about something, like, "Hey, I love this," and all right, yeah, that's good. Think about this, do this different next time, stuff like that. Or if you submit to a publication and they're like, you don't just get a form rejection, but you get a rejection with critique, or when you're talking to someone and you're not the right fit at the moment, because usually when someone's putting together a project, they already have people in mind, unless it has to have the right place, right time. But if you pitch to someone, you're probably going to hear back from them within a year of them like, "Hey, I actually have this new thing coming up and I thought of you." But find people who are really thoughtful when they reject you. Because those people who usually are going to be very meticulous, but also they see potential in your work and want to work with that. I'm known by a group of industry vets, primarily Silverline and Silverline adjacent, but there are a few Keto Brown noses. Yes. Learned a lot about my last rejection. Yeah. We always learn from rejections, and also kind of what you mentioned earlier, but being in the comments, being brown nosing creators on the stream is a good way to get them to want to work with you in the future.
And taking advantage of every opportunity. Like
Yeah.
where do you get to ask the questions, right? Like this is where you ask as many questions as you can to learn as much as you
Yeah.
can when there's no pressure to do it, right? They're
Absolutely.
just people who are here
Yeah.
who can just give you either their opinion or what they know from the industry. So just
Yeah.
take advantage of every space that you can get in with people who've walked that.
How do you guys find that Jose off for the evening? Asked Tommy Flormonte. Howdy, Tommy. No, Jose is currently dying from a cough, so if he's alive next week, he'll be back. But he's resting right now. Yeah, take this every space you get. If there's someone who's answering questions at a convention, ask away. If you word questions, sincerely in a way that isn't not trying to take advantage of someone. A space like Threads now is great for that. It used to be Twitter, but the final coffin. I won't even say like the final coffin got put on Twitter. Like just got straight up like set on fire and punted down the mountain because now you're gonna be charged just to be a basic user of Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I think that's going to turn a lot of people off. So.
Yeah. Okay. Can't talk about both these. All right, I already kind of mentioned my do's and don'ts, but the next bullet point I have here is networking etiquette. I already kind of talked a little bit about my do's and don'ts. But for I'll open up the question to both of you. What are some essential do's and don'ts when networking in the community? And how do you maintain a balance between professionalism and friendship or building a relationship?
I'll go first as the novice again. I think I primarily have taken the approach that I want to be if it's in person. This is for in person kind of stuff.
Yep.
I want to genuinely be into or have interest in the interaction. So I don't like to, and there are people who have a different approach to this, but I don't like to communicate for the sake of communicating, right? Just get
Sure.
out there and just talk. I would rather have a genuine interest in what you have to say, ask genuine questions that, regardless of if you, of course, this is all tactfully, but regardless of how they feel about you, they can offer something that you can take away from the situation. And then they genuinely know that you asked something that engaged them instead of kind of
Yeah.
like what David said, oh, I like your work. Oh, how did you do this? It's kind of, are you really trying to be a part of this space in an edifying way? So that's
Right.
kind of how I approach in-person stuff. And it's worked out pretty well, right? Because people can sense your genuine interest, and I think people feed off of that kind of thing when you're both interested in a thing, right? Like you guys mentioned earlier. So you connect in a different way when that happens, and I think that that's how I have had success in person. But
Yeah.
again, my engagement has been limited thus far in person, and a lot of it has been online. So.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. It's a lot of getting that interest, what you want to get out of it, and what you want to relay in your interactions. Just what I'm having a hard time. It's really about caring about what you want to do and what you want to get out of it. I mean, that's the basic fundamentals of it. I'm not sure how much I can expand on that. That's just pretty much, you summed it up pretty well. As you see, it's just
Absolutely. Yeah.
exactly. I try to get the most out of what I can, and try and be as forward, in my intentions and all that. What can I get from this, and what can I offer? That's another thing too. Is you gotta also offer, not just take everything, and just see what you can do to offer as well. So
absolutely. Yeah. My only ending note on that is that And intentional communication prove that either you're a fan or that you actually have interest in what we have to offer. So I've heard Emerald City Comic Con 1 year, and you see Cassisi and I sharing a table selling comics. Come up and ask us about Howard Static's Prague Ultimate Weapon.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
then
right.
we'll know that you're a real one.
Yeah.
And if you know what that means, congratulations, you're a nerd. Asking some questions before we go on. Yes, Vic. The news for now, as of now, is that basic Twitter is going to be charged just a monthly service fee. I don't have many in-person interactions in terms of comics because I'm a cave dwelling goblin, but I'll shoot the breeze a bit while also talking about the brass tacks. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the thing also, Vic, is you can you got to get out there more.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can be as you said, a cave dwelling goblin, but not that I believe you are. Pretty nice kid, but if you choose to sit in and just kind of take everything in and limit yourself, then you're limiting your options. It's if there's a convention or anything nearby that you can get to, if it's getting out in the comic store, and socializing, maybe hanging out for an hour or something like that, and just shooting the breeze with the other people that come in. That stuff, as much as you put into it is as much as you can take out of it. So just don't lock yourself in a dungeon and expect that, because people don't see that. People don't. It's a hard thing to remember somebody who you can't put a face to and stuff like that. So.
And that can be hard if you're introverted too. I think you have to make the decision that you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? When in terms of engaging with other people, because I'm the same way. I am a very kind of private person, and I don't necessarily like that, but I'm comfortable being uncomfortable. Like over the years, you just you got to put yourself out there if you expect to kind of reap anything. Like you just can't wish for that one day that somebody will find you and see the gem of your work, right? You gotta kind of go out there and just get comfortable being uncomfortable and start growing in that way.
Gotta try the unknown a little bit. And if you are uncomfortable, that's when you take the extra. Here's a pro tip: take the extra day off at the end of the con. All right, give yourself some time to refresh. That's the pro tip there. It's probably just stuck. That is valid, but eventually you'll once the item is drafted, the next step is to get in front of somebody.
Well, that's a good point too. Yeah. All right, I'm his last comment. I'm not private. I'm just stuck at the drafting board too much most days. Well, the thing about being a penciler, for example, is that little pad of paper that you're sketching on will travel. So maybe take that with you and set aside some time. See if your local comic shop has a corner of their display case that you can sit there and scribble some stuff out while you're in there. Maybe the guy behind the counter, or maybe one of the other people that's coming in to buy comics, maybe they might go, hey, I like this, but maybe try this or maybe try that. That way, you're still accomplishing your drawing time, but you're also out there doing your connection time, talking with people and getting ideas, and maybe you're looking over at that comic that sparks something that you hadn't thought about at the time, and it's like, oh, well, maybe I need to include something like this in my drawing and all that. So
yeah, absolutely. And if you're getting too stuck on your own creation, something that just lives in my head is a saying from Voltaire, which is the enemy of perfect is good. The idea that if you're striving for perfection, you're never going to create anything good. The idea is that at some point, it has to be good enough and it has to be done. So if you're constantly refining, you have to acknowledge, like, this is done. I'm going to go get notes on it, and then once you get notes, I have something I can action on. That's not to say you shouldn't practice, obviously, but it should be good enough for where are you now, and then once you get that criticism, you can go back to work on it. But at some point, you can only go so far without new input or without having it done and on in someone's hands. So, if you ever feel like you can't get something just quite right, do the best you can, and then talk to someone more experienced and figure out how you fix it. Yeah. The last note we should probably hit on, since we kind of talked about quite a lot of everything that I've written out here.
Yes, we've covered his topics without him
Pretty
even
much,
asking
yeah.
us. Good job, Cassisi. You're doing great.
It's a really
Done
good
it by
conversation.
myself.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how we see the future of networking and comics evolving. How do you see the landscape of networking and the comic book industry evolving in the future? What emerging trends or technology do you think would impact networking for creators?
I mean, again, take this with a grain of salt as the newbie guy. But I think it's going to get back to the time where people, right now we're so broad. We can access everybody, tons of spaces where you can go find people to collab with. But I think that in that, we're going to grow to the point where now you're going to create these pockets again. And I won't say they're like the factories of old that produced comics, but at the same time, you're going to get, and I think you're already kind of seeing that, these factories.
I was gonna say I feel like we're kind of seeing that with the rise of people who want to go only indie, people who want to go traditional publishing, people who want to do only webcomics or only digital first comics, because you can do webcomic and digital first comic, the two separate things, not necessarily intertwined, but they can be. But I know plenty of people who work in comics, but they've only ever done webcomics. And that's what covers their nut, and it's valid, and it's a comic book, and it's a thing that they may only put out 5 panels a week, but that's they're getting consistent work.
Yep, and you're gonna see them. They're gonna like mature in those different areas, and then it'll be interesting to see how then networking looks, right? Because now you have once again those bastions of where you would go to if you wanted to get in that arena, and then there are this well-known circle of people or organizations that you can go to again, and it's not so broad anymore. It's kind of broad, but still in these pockets. So that's kind of where I think it will go, and it looks like it's going that way. I want to be in one of those folds. That works. Yeah.
I kind of had a similar thought process as I was doing my own maturing into the space, where at first I was going super broad, like I just want to make comics of any kind, take whatever, and then I thought, okay, I want to find a way to get into traditional publishing. I want to eventually write for Marvel because I love where X-Men is at like now. I love Eternals. I'm an outlier on the network, but I'm a fan of where Marvel is at currently. But and then I was like, no, my ideas outside of like my spy stuff, like Wolf Hunter and Map Project, are pretty tame compared to what I want to do. Most of my ideas are very psychotic, would probably be like rated R. I'm like, Marvel or DC are not touching this unless they bring back Max. Yeah. It's like, so I need to go indie. Yeah.
Fair.
David, do you have any thoughts?
My thoughts on this were you're right in that that audience, that certain target audience that you need to do. And if you want to be a well-rounded person, then you've got to be open to some of the different things. I mean, all of us have done. I can't say all of us because I can't speak for you guys, but many of the people that I've talked to have done work that maybe it's not, maybe it's a little too dark. Maybe it's a subject matter that you necessarily wouldn't go, "Hey, mom, come take a look at this."
Yeah. I know Vic has already heard about me working on some Japanese smut. So,
so obviously, if your target item is you want to do the straight superhero stuff, the good, bad, classic villain and all that stuff, then your major, your major two are a good thing for that. You've got other independents and kind of bridging into some of the major two if you want to do more maybe darker story written stuff like that. If you want to do something that's kind of a quick get in there and show some stuff and kind of roll with it as it goes, then maybe web comics and stuff like that are good for you. So it's a good thing to know and kind of map out, at least for now, where you want to go with that, and then you can hit your target areas. That doesn't mean that today you're like, I only want to draw real dark, all this stuff, and I'm independent comics are the only way I want to go. It doesn't mean that 5 years from now that's the same mindset you're going to have, or even a year from now. So getting and mapping out where you want to go now, at least you feel like you're working towards that direction and you're accomplishing something. And once you go through and you start accomplishing those things, maybe that's the desire. So a good reference that I got from this is look at Tyler Kirkham. He's did the the Walking Dead, the dark zombie stuff, and then it's like that afforded him to do stuff like who knew he was a huge, or I didn't know until this, huge Transformers fan.
Yeah,
that's a completely different type of thing. So getting what you're into now doesn't necessarily mean that you have to close yourself off to other things. So and as you go through and do it, you have other opportunities to maybe if you're successful in this, maybe if you're successful at a smaller independent press or self-published thing, that gets you in the door to do maybe more of the mainline big two companies doing the stuff that they so they like your stuff. So that's always a good thing to map, and don't be afraid to change. Sometimes on the fly you just need to change it up and say well, this has been good, but it hasn't been satisfying. Where do I go from here? So
definitely. All right, Vic, that's a good goal, and hello, JE. Yeah, I agree with all that. Kind of seeing a return to not necessarily like almost like a subdivision within the media where now TV is, you have traditional TV, you have streaming, and then you have ad-free streaming. And we're going to see that similar divisions within the different types of comic books available. And then at the same concept, same idea, like with all those TV writers, comic book creators, you're probably going to want to find a way to avoid being pigeonholed and become broad, just to find that additional work to get that expansive network, and then later on focus in once you've gone broad first. Yeah. And oddly enough, one last point of wisdom I'll give to people. I won't say never turn down a smut job, because and some people have their own comments about it, but there's a lot of smut work it needs doing and it pays. Regardless of
somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, somebody's got to do it. It's the backbone of the economy. But in a similar vein, though, we'll say be comfortable working in darker horror work. Something like that. There's a lot of horror fans, and there's a lot of horror projects always in the works, and not always people that want to do it. So if you're looking to get in there and like you eventually want to do superheroes, but the only work you can find right now is doing a zombie comic. Don't turn that down necessarily, because you'll be able to hopefully later transition that all later on.
And it's probably
Well,
cool. Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
It's probably cool trying to figure out how you can color that environment that you don't necessarily kind of work in, right? So, let's say I'm not a horror person either, but I have written something that's horror just to see how I would color that scenario.
Absolutely, yeah.
And make it, appealing to me. So I think that accepting that challenge is kind of fun sometimes.
Yeah, it's a whole point of stretching your skill set, because even if you are writing a cape, like down the line, if you may get the opportunity to work on Doctor Strange, and Doctor Strange oftentimes will have arcs that incorporate a lot of horror. So you're like, yeah, I've experienced writing horror and I love capes. This sounds exactly what I want to do.
Yeah. I didn't mean to cut you off, David. What were you going to say?
No, it's just that's well, 2 points, and one kind of came from this is kind of decide for yourself what you want your limits are. And it kind of flashed to the thing that Dick said. Maybe what you suggested. Don't be afraid for that because somebody does it. Maybe that's outside of your realm. Stand true to that. Definitely. Draw some hard lines to say, this is the stuff I'll never do. This is the stuff I will do. But don't be afraid to keep that line a little close to the border. Maybe maybe you want to stay away from. Maybe your ideal situation is I want to do capes and all that stuff, but maybe at this point where you push your thing to an independent, maybe it's a more violent, or maybe something like that. Maybe you push your line a little bit more, but always remember where your line is and what you don't want to cross, and don't cross it. Just draw those lines. But the other thing that I had from before is also don't be afraid to do the grunt work. You're gonna have things for the grunt work. Remember, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of successful people in the industry that started out just being the person going and doing copies, and whatever. So don't rule out. And my recommendation is don't be the one that says I'm too good to do this. I'm too good to do this, or whatever. That's something that I can honestly say that I learned from my parents was don't put yourself above any of the work. I know for myself that if I didn't have anything going with comics or anything with my day job, and I found myself out of work, I would not be afraid to be doing anything physical or whatever, or showing up at some fast food restaurant or whatever. I don't ever put myself above doing the grunt work, and for me, that's been a philosophy that's helped me out. The grunt work is a lot of the stuff that gets you in and gets you talking with people, and that can lead to avenues in themselves.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the joke that goes around in a lot of writing circles. That's the best way to start working as a writer is to become an accountant. Is that Marvel and DC all have accounting firms. If any TV studio, any film production company, they all have an accounting department, and the requirements of getting into those are much lower than they are to getting into the writings. But if you start building a connection there, building that network out, someone knows like, hey, this guy who just handles payroll writes pretty well. Maybe you should have him take a crack at this.
Or it's a case of, we have this book. Our writer, he just said he can't do it, and who can we hand this to? We need this done by Friday. And listening to some of the other Silverline creators,
I think Kurtis
Like-
was the coffee
like-
boy.
Well, like Barbara was always
Yeah.
talking about. She's always talking about that she worked on, pretty much almost any of the books that were, that Malibu put out and all that, because she was always the one, or one of the people that was always willing to say yes, and she was a go-to person,
Yeah.
and it just for me brings strong things about who she is and all this stuff. But it's always getting that in there and knowing that if somebody can turn around and say, hey, can you do this, and you're like, yeah, sure, I can do that, because I've done stuff outside of my realm. I did some work in a Wolverine encyclopedia as basically a copy text writer for one of the issues and all that stuff. I'm sitting here doing artwork, and it's like, hey, we need somebody to fill in some stuff. It's like, sure, I'll do it. It's outside of my realm, but yeah, here we go.
Yeah,
and that's another piece that I have in my portfolio.
Yeah,
So
I know a lot of. I mean, I got into comics first being submissions editor, and that's the whole thing of, just because you imagine yourself being an auteur one day or something like that doesn't mean you can't, start out by just saying yes to whatever work gets thrown at you. I mean, starting out, no one is above, just doing line edits, and it's not menial work; it's important work. And you also will learn a lot from doing stuff. Or if you want to be an artist one day, but you just end up being someone who does rough thumbs, or they hire on to essentially ghost illustrate a page or two every now and then, you're going to end up learning a whole lot from that process of what are these other creators doing, what's working, what's not, how am I fitting into this. And especially if you're an artist, like, you end up learning a lot. If you end up doing that thing where it still happens every now and then, but it doesn't happen as much as it used to, where you'd see a thing where you get the comic book and you get page 24 by this person, as opposed to the rest of the book, because they just need to get something done in time. But it's being that person who says yes, and then learning how you're going to end up doing it in a style, but learning how to match the tone and a composition of an existing work. That's such an important skill set as far as working within a team. And so a job like that can be really good training wheels for developing that skill set.
And we've talked about this before on this, and I think some of the other streams. It's like, there is sometimes you balance, what is a project that you're heavily involved with, and maybe more of a paying project that maybe you're willing to do a project that maybe doesn't pay as well, but gives you a different set of skill sets that you don't have, or it's something that gives you more exposure. So, kind of an example, not using specific books, but there's different tiers of books from an artist standpoint. There's different tiers of books that are more graphically done, require a lot more details and stuff like that tend to pay, depending on the publisher, may pay more than a book that's more baseline, not heavily graphic. So sometimes it might be relevant to go through and do some of the pages that are very quick to do, and get a lot of the pages out there and a lot of examples of your stuff, versus taking more time and doing a more detailed page or a more detailed type book. And some artists will go through and kind of balance that, and when they're starting out, they tend to do things and not be as they don't have, same thing with actors, where they have a lot of options as they're more established. They can do more known projects versus a lot more of the indie projects and things where they're starting out, where they just want to get themselves out there and known. So there's a balance on there of taking some things and saying yes to a lot of things that you can do to get your stuff out there so people see you and know that aspect of it. And then once you get better, then you can balance through and say, okay, well, I can afford to kind of pick and choose a little more now, or I don't want that one, maybe it's not my style and maybe hurt me more. You have more of that filter as you're longer established and doing more and more stuff. But you gotta kind of look and see where you are and what you're willing to do to get yourself out there versus the prime books, because there's only so many prime books that are out there.
Yeah.
Unless you create a prime book yourselves, and that's a very big uphill fight on its own. So.
Yeah, but also to before we end for the night, to tie it all back into tonight's theme of networking, but kind of everything that David just said there. But presenting yourself as that person who will say yes and get things done does a lot to build you goodwill and helps build your reputation, which can exceed your, I guess technically be precede in this context, English, your network, where someone's going to tell me like, yeah, I just had this project need to be done. I gave it to David and he knocked out the colors. And like by the end of the day, it was wild. And then all of a sudden David now has a reputation in the office of being the person who gets things done when you need it. And he's the guy that can go to in a pinch. So when something bigger and my partner comes up, we're like, we have a track record here. We're going to send it to this guy. Or if you, if they're hurting someone and they talk to a friend outside of work who, comic creators, comic creators. So then they're getting coffee or something outside a convention with another person. They're like, oh, actually, that sounds really cool. And I liked how this turned out. I'm going to reach out to this guy as well. And because I want to, I know he's going to get something done and I want that look. So building that reputation of being the person who will take on a task given to you and knock it out will do a lot to give you a good reputation and expand your network beyond this, the people you have firsthand points of contact with.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that has been tonight's show on networking. Next week, we will be talking about where'd it go? Oh, there it is. We're actually talking about the online presence of comics, webcomics, and social media. So how, as a creator, you need to have social media, but then also kind of talking about the differentiating there of webcomics as their own venue. Is something worth pursuing? Do you do it in addition to being a physical comic person, or is that something you only want to do because that is a valid option you can do as a comic book creator? Is now just be someone who only does webcomics. Haley Martin, for the longest time, she only did webcomics, and she was very successful. So maybe I'll ask her if she wants to come on for that one. But also talking about how social media, social media marketing is going to be a big part of that. Do we have any final thoughts before I say goodbye to these people?
Good show.
Good show. Very good. All right, make sure to check out Wednesday Wham and Silver Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern on their respective days. We will see you next week. And until that time, make mine
Silverline. Make mine Silverline.
My name is Ross Ritchie from Boom Studios, and make mine Silverline.